Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Education Board.
Hello students, a very warm welcome to the TV learning program where you're going to be watching and learning. As usual, I'm your teacher Herbert, and I will be taking you through the biology of Form 3, Senior 3 class, and we are still on the same unit, which is Unit 8. And Unit 8 is concerning about circulatory system in humans, and it is Lesson 4-5, and which is concerning about the lymphatic system. As you know, in the previous lesson, we discussed about the components of blood, what are the major components of blood, and how does the components of blood do their functions. We talked about the blood is composed of the blood plasma, which is occupying almost like 55% of the blood. We talked about and it transports nutrients to different body cells. We talked about the platelets, which are very important in protecting the body against the platelets, which are very important in clotting of the blood. We talked about the WBC, which are white blood cells, or the lymphocytes, which are very important in fighting our body against infections. We also talked about the red blood cells, which are very important in transporting of oxygen and even oxygen, nutrients to different body cells, because all these body cells, they need oxygen and they need nutrients if they are to survive. We also discussed about blood clotting. That was Lesson 4. We talked about how the the process of blood clotting. And we talked how does the blood clot, and we talked about the process of blood clotting when someone gets injured. Where we talked about when someone gets injured, the platelets are able to surround the damaged wound or the damaged wall or the damaged skin, and eventually which triggers the production or the release of what you call thromboplastin. And once the thromboplastin is released, automatically it triggers the production or the release of the calcium ion, which triggers the production of prothrombin. And after prothrombin, we talked about the prothrombin is active when an enzyme which is called the thrombokinase is released. And that one will cause the blood to be formed into a soluble protein, which is called fibrinogen, which is going to be converted into fibrin, which is a clotting mesh, and now the blood is going to clot in that process. So we discussed all those things concerning about blood clotting, components of blood. So student, I welcome you today in Lesson 5, which is concerning about the lymphatic system. As we talked about circulatory system. So now today we're going to discuss about the lymphatic system. What is the running objective of the lesson? So I would welcome everyone to get a pen, a notebook, and then you note the important concept and even words that I'm going to be mentioning in the lesson. So student, welcome to the lesson of the lymphatic system. So the running objective, we are going to be outlining the components and the function of the lymphatic system. What are the major components of the lymphatic system? And now what are the functions of the lymphatic system? So when we talk about circulatory system and the lymphatic system, both of them, they work together to transport nutrients and even removing what you call removing wastes from our body, or removing toxin from our body, and also removing excess water in our body. It's also the lymphatic system can do that function. Not only that, the lymphatic system contains what you call lymphocytes. What are lymphocytes? Lymphocytes, they are very important in protecting our body against the infection, disease-causing agent, bacteria, viruses, and etc. We are going to see how the lymphatic system is acting as a drainage system, returning back the fluid into the blood circulation. How does the lymphatic system is able to bring back the lymph fluid into the bloodstream? We are going to see how the lymphatic system is also responsible for removing the waste product from the body. Removing waste product from the body is also done by the lymphatic system. So we're going to go through all these on the major components, the organs that are responsible, what are the major components of the lymphatic system. As I mentioned, the major components of the lymphatic system, there is lymph vessels, there is lymph nodes, all right? And we also have lymph organs. So we're going to see what are the major components of the lymphatic system. So one of the major components of the lymphatic system, we have lymph vessels. We have what we call lymph capillaries. We have lymph nodes. Lymph nodes. These are nodes, lymph nodes, which are also very important in protecting the body against the infection. We're also going to discuss about lymph organs. Examples of lymph organs, we have the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils, and also the adenoids. So we're going to go through all those processes and discuss about the major components of the lymphatic system, as well as we are discussing about the function of the lymphatic system. So students, welcome to the lesson, and I'm going to tell you how the blood enters into arterial end or the capillary network has high pressure, because once the blood enters into arterial end, because most of the arteries carry blood with high pressure compared to the veins, and compared to that, leaving the venules. And the venules, once we get small capillaries, they form what we call venules. So the pressure forces water and even small solutes in the blood to pass through the capillary wall. So this, as the blood is moving into arterioles, it must be moving with high pressure. And in that way, the pressure will just force water and even small solutes in the blood to pass through the capillary wall and form a fluid outside the capillary, which is called lymph. The lymph is a fluid which is going to be formed outside of the blood vessels, and that one is called lymph, a fluid which is called lymph, and outside of the capillaries. And this fluid is surrounds the cells, and we call it to be interstitial fluid, and which normally surrounds the cell. You could be asking a question to yourself, what is the function of interstitial fluid, which is going to be formed and surrounding the cell? One of the functions of interstitial fluid is bathing the cells. Not only bathing the cells, it also plays a function of nourishment, nourishing the cells, because the cell has to be nourished if they are to carry their functions effectively and properly. So this fluid surrounds the cell in a tissue, and this is called what you call tissue fluid. That fluid that surrounds the cells are referred to as tissue fluid. And blood cells and large proteins do not pass through the capillary walls because they are large in size, because we consider as smaller molecules can just be able to pass through. That's why we talk about we bring the concept of what we call selectively permeable or selectively permeable. It means that some molecules, when the pressure is very high, molecules of small size, take an example like water and other solute, can pass through the capillary wall. But those that has got large size will not pass through. Examples, we have large proteins, we have red blood cells, take an example, RBCs, cannot pass through. So, and will not form what you call a tissue fluid. So let's go through, as what I was talking about. The blood enters into arterial end of the capillary network and has higher pressure. That higher pressure will force what you call small molecules to be moved through the capillary wall, and those that are going to be with a large size will not be moved into the capillary wall. Instead, they will just be retained inside the capillary wall. And that one that fluid that surrounds the cell in the tissue fluid is called what you call tissue fluid. Tissue fluid, as I mentioned, its function, nourishment, bathing the cells. Blood cells, as we have reached here, blood cells and large proteins do not pass through the capillary wall. So if they don't pass through, they will have to be retained there. The tissue fluid is similar to the plasma. As you remember, we talked about one of the components of blood. We talked about blood plasma. Students, do you still remember that? We mentioned one of the major components of blood is blood plasma. So the tissue fluid which is going to be formed surrounding the cell, it is similar to what you call the blood plasma, but with less proteins, because that tissue fluid, because I said as it is moving through the capillary wall, the water and other solute will just be moving, will just be able to move, as I can talk about what you call diffusion. Moving from higher concentration to lower concentration will bring the idea what you call down the concentration gradient. So the tissue fluid is similar to the plasma, but what makes it be differ from the plasma is having less protein, because proteins are very large in size. They cannot pass through the capillary walls. They have to be retained there. From this fluid, that cells obtain their nutrients. I said one of the functions of this fluid, they bathe the cells, bathing the cells. They bathe them, they clean them. And another function of the tissue fluid is what you call nourishing the cell. Talk about nourishing the cell, it gives nutrients to the cells without forgetting also providing the cells oxygen. All these requirements, all these necessities are needed by the cell if a cell is to survive. So the tissue fluid are very important in giving the nutrients to the cells and the surrounding cells around the capillary wall, and also providing them with oxygen, nutrients, and also bathing them. In bathing them, they are able to remove waste materials. Are you following me very well? So bathing the cells, nourishing the cells, and also removing the waste materials are also done by the tissue fluid which are surrounding the cells. So waste materials and even circulatory products that's supposed to be products from the cells diffuse into it. And once they diffuse into it, into the tissue fluid I'm mentioning, once they diffuse into it, what happens? The tissue fluid eventually drains back into the blood at the venular end of the capillary where the fluid is raw. You find in the venular end, there is a rest of fluid, because I talked about one of the functions of the lymphatic system. It acts as a drainage system. Drainage system that is returning back the fluid into the bloodstream. So it means that tissue fluid are eventually drains back after bathing the cells, after nourishing the cells, after removing the waste product. Toxic substances, toxins, once they are removed out into the cell, now that tissue fluid has to be returned back into the bloodstream, where in the venular end, the tissue fluid has been in lower concentration because of the pressure that has been created. So most of the tissue fluid does not re-enter the capillaries, but instead makes it away into another system of capillaries, what we call lymphatic capillaries. The lymphatic capillaries, inside the system, the fluid is known as what we call lymph. I said with the fluid that are normally found, lymph is clearly water, like plasma, but is normally surrounding what we call the capillaries. We have the diagram. Let us go through the diagram of formation of tissue fluid. As I mentioned here, we have the venular end, we have arterial end, and we have the capillary. We have the cells that are surrounding these capillaries. How is the tissue fluid is going to be formed in biology? I want to make you to understand how the tissue fluid is going to be formed. As I was saying that here the blood is moving to high pressure. But in the venular end, the blood is moving in veins. The blood is moving to lower pressure. So once the blood is moving through the arterial end, now entering into arterial end, there is high pressure. And once there is high pressure, it forces some of the substances, especially with those of smaller size. Take an example like water and even other solutes, to move into the capillary by means of diffusion. And now they're going to be surrounding the cells. These are the cells. Everybody can see these are the cells. These are capillary. And after this fluid is going to be released around these ends, they're going to form what we call a lymph fluid. And once they don't form the lymph fluid, which is surrounding here, by means of what we call ultrafiltration. If I mention ultrafiltration, this is not your first time to hear the word ultrafiltration. Ultra means that you can filtrate some substances, and other substances they cannot be filtered, especially those one with large size. Take an example: proteins, red blood cells, white blood cells cannot pass through because they have a large size. But water and other small and other molecules can pass through that and form what we call a fluid. And eventually, this fluid, which is going to be moving from here in venule, will be returned back into the bloodstream, where in the venular end they are in less concentration or in less percentage. That was, so I said the lymphatic capillaries link up to form another transport system made of what you call lymph vessels. So lymphatic capillaries are the one to link up and form another form of transport system, which transports what? It transports lymph fluid. So lymphatic capillaries are the one to link up and form another transport system made up of what you call lymph vessels. We have lymph vessels. We have lymph veins. We also have what you call lymph capillaries. So without going very far, the lymphatic system is somehow linked with the circulatory system. But what does circulatory system do? It transports blood. But then the lymphatic system transports what you call lymph fluid. I think everybody is able to understand. But on the other hand, the function is the same because there is lymph vessels, there is lymph veins, and also lymph capillaries. These vessels are thin than blood vessels. If I mention about thin than blood vessels, they are small in size, very thinner. But other blood vessels, they are thick. Take an example like arteries. They are thick because they are able to withstand the high blood pressure that is going to be, because we mentioned that most of the arteries, they carry oxygenated blood, except the pulmonary artery. All veins, they carry the oxygenated blood, except pulmonary vein. So arteries, they have to be thicker. Then these other take an example, these I said the lymphatic vessels, they are thinner compared to the circulatory vessels. So thinner than blood vessels and have many internal valves. Why do we talk about internal valves? If I may be internal valves, let me just try to show you. This is a vessel. We must be having some valves that are located like this. And we mentioned it on the heart, because the blood must be a single direction, not a double direction. So once they cross, they make the blood to move in a single direction, not making back to move into a backward. So these vessels, also the lymphatic system has what we call vessels, valves. These valves are very important to make blood move in a single direction, not backward direction. So even the lymphatic system moves in a single direction. So they also have a swelling along their lengths, called what they call lymph nodes. There are some swelling, and these lymph nodes are located in very many parts of our body. And the lymph nodes contains what we call lymphocytes. We have our immune system. Lymphocytes, they produce antibodies. And what does antibodies do to our body? They defend our body against infection. All right? So protecting the body against infection is done by lymphocytes. So these lymph nodes contains what you call lymphocytes. So they are normally found in armpits, they are found in the neck, in the throat, they are found in many parts of the body, and they are very important in protecting the body against the infection. So I said the lymphatic system is a network of tubules throughout the body and drains fluid called lymph from tissue and empties it back into the heart. That's when I mentioned it earlier. Emptying it back into the heart, that is drainage system. You know, some of you have ever seen what you call a drainage system. You have ever seen in some swamp areas where water is drained back into the river, a drainage system. You have ever seen in marsh areas where people are cultivating rice, they do what you call a drainage system. Water is not released in anyhow. The water has to be returned back. So the lymphatic system is able to return back the lymph fluid into the bloodstream. When you find the bloodstream has got less lymph fluid. So I said into the bloodstream, lymph is filtered through spleen. What filters? Before the blood comes back before the lymph fluid comes back into the bloodstream, what filters the lymph fluid? We have the spleen, we have the thymus, we have the lymph nodes. These are the parts, or these are the organs that are responsible for filtering the lymph before it comes back, before it is returned back, before it is emptied back into the bloodstream. So blood vessels tend to sip fluid into the surrounding tissues. Sweeping the fluid must be swept out into the surrounding tissues because the tissues need this fluid. And the lymphatic system drains off any extra fluid and stops the tissue from what you call puffing up. So if the tissues are going to be puffing up, it has to be stopped in that way so that they can perform their normal functioning. Let's go. Lymphatic system consists of fluid, as I mentioned. The lymphatic system is made up of fluid, lymphatic fluid, which is called lymph. It is made up of lymphatic vessels that transports lymph and organs that contains what we call lymphoid tissues. Let's go through the diagram. We have the diagram. We're going to see where these are found mostly. We have the jugular veins. We have caravano lymph nodes. These are the part that normally does what you call filtering before the lymph is emptied back into the blood. We have mesenteric lymph nodes. We have the gut. We have inguinal lymph nodes. We have the thoracic duct, which is also emptying back the lymph fluid into the blood saturation. So all these are nodes that are responsible for filtering the lymph fluid or lymph before it is emptied back into the bloodstream. So I said the lymph is a fluid similar to the composition to the plasma. It is delivered from blood plasma as a fluid passing through the capillary walls at interior end as interstitial fluid, as I mentioned it at the beginning, to accumulate it and picked up and removed back into the lymphatic vessels and returns back to the blood system. What are lymphatic vessels? Unlike blood vessels, only carry fluid away from the tissues. So lymphatic vessels are responsible to carry only fluid away from the tissue fluid. But we also mentioned that the smallest lymphatic vessels are what we call lymphatic capillaries. Everybody knows that one. That one I mentioned it before. I just go through that one, which begins in the tissue spaces, and lymph capillaries are found in all regions of the body, except these lymphatic capillaries are found in all regions of the body, except in the bone marrows, in the nervous system, in the central nervous system, and the tissues such as in epidermis that lack what we call blood vessels. Because in epidermis there are no blood vessels. So because epidermis are very important and they are protecting the body. Let's go through the lymphatic organs. I mentioned it, a number of lymphatic organs. We talked about a number of lymphatic organs. I talked about the lymph nodes. I talked about tensors. I talked about the spleen. I talked about thymus without forgetting adenoids. Adenoids, I have not mentioned it, but it is also a part of lymphatic organs. So these are organs that are responsible. These are all organs that can produce what you call lymph fluid. So I mentioned the lymphatic organs are characterized by clusters of lymphocytes and other cells and a branching of connective tissues, fibers, and even lymphatic organs, including the lymph nodes, tensors, spleen, thymus. So all these, let me start with the lymph nodes and tensors and spleen. All these are very important in protecting the body against infections. So all these organs, lymphatic organs, are responsible for releasing what we call lymphocytes, and lymphocytes are very important in protecting the body against infections from bacteria, from viruses, from fungi, and etc. So I said the lymph nodes are small bean-shaped structure found in a particular location in the body. Such are places including the neck. They are found in the neck, in the armpits, and even between the lungs. Lymph nodes contain white blood cells which fight infections. So, as I mentioned it earlier, they are responsible for fighting the infections in our body. They are acting as body soldiers. We have tensors. Where are the tensors located? Tensors are two lymph nodes located in each side of the back of the throat. At the back of the throat, we have what we call the tensors. And they help the body to prevent against infection also. So we have the spleen. The spleen is located upper left abdominal cavity, beneath the diaphragm when you are going posterior to the stomach. So the spleen is also very important for protecting the body against the infection. We have the thymus, which is located in the chest. It is a soft organ with two lobes that is located inside the what you call rib cage. I know everybody knows what you call rib cage. Just behind the breastbone. You know what I call breastbone? These are bones that are found in the breast, the breastbone. And it is relatively large in infants and in children, but after puberty, it begins to decrease in size so that an older adult is quite small. So the thymus goes more, and that's why you find in the immune system in old people is very less, because most of them, the thymus is decreasing in a small as the person gets old. So the function of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has a multiple interacting functions. One, responsible for removing interstitial fluid from the tissues, as I mentioned. Transport of white blood cells, as I mentioned, it is responsible for transport of red blood cells and from lymph nodes into the bones. It also absorbs and transports fats and chyle from the digestive system. So in simply, it acts as a drainage system, removing all waste product from the body, and also responsible for release of what we call white blood cells, the lymphocytes, which are responsible for protecting the body against the immune system. It transports dendritic cells. If you talk about the dendritic cells to lymph nodes where an immune system is going to be formed. So we have home assignment. You have to go through that home assignment and you test your competence. That one can just be got from biology book of senior 3 on page 146. You will find that activity self-evaluation. Spleen is a lymph organ that filters blood and also acts as a reservoir for water, fats, and fluid. Which of the following would be classified as a lymphatic structure? Pancreas, spleen, tensors, and thymus. So students, thank you very much for watching and your active participation and listening. Enjoy the rest of the day. See you next time.